parking
Spend it
spaces.
however you want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can
Well, I
just,
appreciate
you
that,
can
yeah.
slide in there and park there, and some people
Yeah.
can get there
Yeah.
on the street.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna
They
be
come to the
more
square.
generic in my description.
So they go around the
Yeah.
square. Oh, I didn't know that. I've never went.
Yeah, we got a lot of times, we'll have staff that will stay after and they potluck, whatever.
It's supposed to be pretty good, isn't it?
Eat there, and they, I mean, you can't work hard, but they jar the windows.
Yeah.
To the main trucks and cars.
What's that?
I saw where they changed it to 15.
On the way in here, I was like,
Yeah.
I was thinking, the minute I got in here, I didn't remember.
Well, here you go. I pay for them, so I'll give them away some way, you know? There you go.
Thank you. You notice my affiliation has changed since last
Yeah.
time.
Hey, Dave. You're live.
Okay, we're live, so is it ready? Time in? Okay, yep.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 5 o'clock. It's October 25th, 2022. It's time for our monthly meeting of the Board of Directors for the Glasgow Electric Plant Board. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. The first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the agenda. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion.
Have a motion by Witcher,
Second.
a second by Stevens. Is there any discussion?
I would like to just add an item 4 under the project updates, the EV charging stations.
Okay.
Somebody would need to make a motion. If there's no other discussion, make a motion just to add that to the agenda and then approve the agenda as amended. If That's where you're at.
Make a motion to approve the addition of number 4 EV project update charging stations.
Okay, we have a motion by Jones. We have a second by Witcher. All right, I think we're clear on that, so.
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes.
Now just approve the amended agenda.
Yeah.
Do what?
Approve the amended agenda.
Okay.
There's not any other amendments to it.
So, I mean, we're good, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't voted.
Okay.
Nobody's voted to approve the agenda,
Yeah.
other than add that one.
Okay,
item.
so we need to approve this agenda.
Amended agenda.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve this amended agenda then, at this time.
Motion.
A motion by Witcher,
Second.
second by Stevens. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes. All righty, so now we're on to number 2, approval of the minutes of the previous month's business meeting. Everything looked in order to me. Did anybody see any discrepancies or anything on that? Last month, okay, everything looked good. Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous month's meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Previous meeting.
Have a motion by Stevens,
Second.
have a second by Jones. Any discussion on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. Number 3, we have our audit and presentation and discussion. I think that's by Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. So, Lanny, turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, we've completed the audit for June 30, 22, and we'll go through and kind of give a summary of it to you. And as always, it's kind of informal here, so if you have questions, feel free to ask, and we'll try to field the questions as best as we can. Turn to page 1 inside the book. We'll go through the book, and that's where I'll kind of just go through and give you the highlights from my standpoint. Page 1 is what's called the auditor's independent report. This is what we provide on the financial statements, whether the financials are fairly stated or not. Then you receive what's called an unmodified report, which means they're fairly stated. So for any user, TVA, council, whatever, it's a positive report that there was no any kind of negative marks on the financial statements from that standpoint. And it's kind of, if you've looked in the prior years, the accounting world always changed the rules quite a bit. They have to justify their reasoning sometimes, I believe, but the letters actually changed from the prior year. And actually, sometimes they don't make sense, but this change did make sense. The opinion now is put first, and it kind of shows you kind of what the whole main thing is. It's unmodified. Then it goes through and talks about the basis of opinion, kind of how what's based on. Really, it's on government auditing standards because you're a component of the city of Glasgow, so it's under government auditing standards. Then Tyler explains responsibilities for management, what your responsibility is for the financials, and on page 2, it kind of goes through and explains more of what an auditor's responsibility is on an audit, and it breaks it down a little more in simplistic terms, and this more common, it's like I call common sense business knowledge, and being real technical, kind of what it does and does not include, kind of from that standpoint. And then it continues on over on page 3. There's some required information that's required to be in the financials. It's the MD&A, it's managed discussion and analysis, which Melanie and Dave provide. There's some more supplemental information in the back to show more detail of the numbers. And then on over on page 4, there's that last paragraph. There's another report we provide in the back on controls and compliance with laws and regulations because it's in accordance with government auditing standards. It's a little heavier requirements of things to do versus just a regular audit because government auditing standards requires more work on some things. So anyway, that's kind of a summary of the report. Good report from my standpoint. Any questions? Okay, if not, page 5. This is, just I mentioned ago, the management discussion analysis. This is what Melanie and Dave provide. It's a good read. It's something that came in several years ago. It allows management to kind of talk about their entity, and it kind of goes where they've been, where you are, and where you're going, if you kind of sum it up from my standpoint. And it goes through and it gives, we talk about facts and things, and they get more into operations and things that we can't talk about really, in my standpoint, but it can give a reader a different aspect, kind of in sense of the entity. So again, I think it'd be good for you to kind of read through that part of it. They kind of break down, it gives them some trend analysis for some 3 years in there, and there's things that they're looking down the path to addressing and things. So again, a good read. Page 11. It's going to be the right. Yeah. It's going to be your statement of net positions. It's like a balance sheet. You've got your assets and liabilities, and I'll kind of point out the key points here. Total assets in the middle of the page, you'll see it was $56 million compared to $52 million last year, about a $4 million increase, about a 7.8% increase in your total assets for the year. And where this comes from primarily is in different areas. You'll see the top says total current assets. Current assets are assets that are going to be items that are liquid, and it can be turned into, in a sense, cash or such within a year cycle. So again, that's what you use to pay your obligations with primarily and service things in operations. The biggest change there is going to be across the board. I mean, receivables are up, and so was some inventory from my standpoint. More inventory required because of supply things, and this receivables up because you had a bigger May and June in this year. It was warmer. Plant primarily was a break even. You had additions, and depreciation kind of offsets it. So the two kind of net out to where the additions increase, the depreciation would decrease it. So it kind of nets out to where the overall change isn't very large. Other assets, it increased about almost $3 million. And the biggest part there is going to be in the cash that's restricted. It's bond proceeds that was issued and not really spent yet. It'd be things are planned for really in the current year and such. So it's money, it's sitting in there to be spent in this fiscal year now for different projects from my standpoint. So that's the main changes there. Deferred outflows at the bottom primarily deals with pension and what we call OPEB is other post-employment benefits, health insurance, another name for that. And it's really all given by the actuaries. And you can see there were some actual increases and decreases from those standpoints. Any questions on page 11? If not, page 12 is the other side of the net position statement, kind of for the liabilities and equity. You can see the total liabilities, pretty much we're break even, about $993,000 difference there. And really what happens there, the total current liabilities are things that are due in the next 12 months. The payables were up primarily because of the TVA and the increase on the bills for May and June. And then you can see the actual non-current liabilities. You had a increase in debt for the new debt. Then also, are done by actuaries, the pension and the OPEB liabilities, both of them decreased. So they kind of offset the overall total impact of increases. So about $700,000 there on the long-term liabilities versus $800,000 in the short term, giving about a $90,000 change overall liabilities. And then the key item in there, net position, is your equity. That's the difference. You had about a $1.8 million increase, about a 10% increase for the year. So again, a good return to add to the bottom line from that standpoint. Any questions on the liability section or the equity section of the net position statement? Okay. Page 13 is your operating statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Operating revenues, $35 million versus $33.7, about $1.4 million increase, about 4.22% increase in revenue for the year. Operating expenses had an increase about 1.42, also about a 4.7% increase. So pretty much dollar for dollar, pretty close. Increase in revenues, expenses kind of offset. As you can see, the operating income actually declined about $7,000. So it's pretty much a break even from that standpoint. Non-operating revenue expenses, $500,000 last year compared to $700,000 this year. Again, there was some items that happened in the current year that caused some of the write-off. There was some additional write-off of premiums for prior debt was in there. $200,000 was kind of increased the loss of that 276 number down in the non-operating expenses, and that was kind of causing an increase between those 2 years there. So overall net position, $2 million prior year, $1.8 million the current year, about $200,000 drop, and those premiums also since caused that, helped that area. Now, something else kind of added to the reduction. Some expenses came through. Kind of they're not going to be normal expenses, recurring. You had a change in your policy for what we call compensating absences, vacation or personal time off, and it was changed, and it actually got more hours to be accrued on the books of time off for employees, which increased the liability about $300,000. So that was also ran through in the current year. It's both of those items, the actual amount on the premium write-off and the vacation and the benefits are non-cash expenses. It's pretty much on paper that creates the liability from my standpoint, the reduced income. So even though income was kind of, a drop, those things caused it to be, it would have been a positive more, about $2,000 increase in income versus the loss, the difference because of those two items really in the current year getting it in 22 versus 21, which would not normally be reoccurring items for 23. So it's like the one-time hit in 22. Does that make sense? Okay. Then on page 14 is the cash flow statement. And this puts the operations on a cash basis. You can see from operating activities, like net income was $7 million last year, be 5.3 this year. And a lot of this, again, it depends on collections and such. And we can see, receivables were up and things, where in a sense it would use cash. That's why they haven't come in yet. So that's why cash is down some. That's forward from operation activities. Capital, financing activities, again, $4.8 million last year, $1.6 million this year. It's a little different because the $3.9 million new borrowings came in and kind of offset the overall net. Like last year would have been 4.8, but the new debt of 3.9 made it drop to about the end of 1.6 this year, the difference. Non-capital financing activities, pretty comparable. Total, the increase in cash equivalents, $3.4 million. And again, most of that's coming from, as we mentioned earlier, the unspent bond proceeds that are sitting there to be spent in this future year from that standpoint, compared to 22 and 22. Any questions on the cash flow?
So the difference in, so you're saying the cash equivalencies are equivalents, right?
Uh-huh.
So we're seeing an increase on those because of the bonds, not
Right.
necessarily because that's cash on hand, but it's.
It's cash on hand. It's cash on hand. It hasn't been spent yet.
Okay.
The cash came in from the bond issuance,
Okay.
and it's just in the account still.
Okay.
It's not been spent yet. At the end of June 22.
I just didn't know if those, and I may be misunderstanding bonds, but I just didn't know if we had the capability of reaching into that, or if we physically have that money.
Because they have it.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
hand, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When those bonds were issued, you got cash.
Okay, okay,
Less cost of issuance and things of that nature.
yeah,
But the cash came into your account.
okay,
And so it's sitting out there, and it's just idle cash until you all use it on your projects
Mhm.
that you want to use it for from that standpoint.
We'll
Yeah.
talk about some of those later.
okay, yeah,
But yeah, but that's why the cash increased the current year.
okay.
And that's typically what y'all have done. I mean, you'll go through and borrow funds and, for expansion and such,
Yeah.
repairs or different projects from my standpoint.
Yeah,
And then on page 15, it just shows, this is the change in the actual current item and things, which kind of creates the number from the operating side on the front. You can see it was like 7 million last year, 5 million this year. And you can see the minus and the pluses of things that add cash or use cash. And that's kind of how you come through that number of changes, because like, just for example, of course, depreciation wasn't anything, but just like for receivables, for example, this year, receivables increased $500,000, so that much cash was used, where last year was only $36,000. So $500,000 was taken away from cash because your receivables hadn't been collected yet. Last year, there were more collected than this year, year in, because you had a higher May and June numbers going out. People hadn't paid you on some of those things yet. Just, it's timing things, what it is, between things that are getting paid. Any questions on cash flow? That's kind of summary of it. Page 16, we won't go through all this, but page 16, all the way through page 45 are the notes, and about a third of those notes are pension and OPEB. And there's some schedules in the back we'll touch on that gives information that's even probably better what's in the notes that's required to put in here, but we'll touch on it. So basically the notes are the ones that go through and that tell you more in detail of things in the financial statements and the numbers in the front. I will just point you on page 22, some things that are different, there's changes on the change in accounting estimate. You'll see there in the middle on note 2 on page 22. You can see there, I mentioned earlier about the change in the policy for compensating absences, and it talks there and it shows that was about $340,000 was that on that last sentence. You can see it kind of, it's a disclosure because it is again a one-time hit that hits pretty much to the current year income levels by having that one-time expense run through. Page 24 goes through and shows all your plant. Just one of the largest number on the net position statement, and it shows the roll, we call it roll forward, beginning and additions, deletions, and ending balances on the plant. And then on page 26 is the debt, which is going to be the next large number, and it shows you all the issuances there. Page 27, like, will show, again, the changes in the debt, the beginning and the new increase in the payments. Again, you had 2012, this year, there was a payoff on it. At one time, you are looking to refi it, but you had cash on hand and just paid it down instead of refining it. So the 12 was retired in the current year, too, the bond. And then on page 28, down toward the bottom, gives you your maturity schedule of debt. So you can see what it goes the next 5 years and then in 5-year increments. And those are going to be your debt service requirements for principal and interest for the next, in 2041. that's the main thing through the notes. We will touch on all those. And if you flip on back then now to page 46. Here's the first schedule I told you about. You know, this is the pension. And it came in play back in 15. And it's on a 10-year schedule, and it builds each year as the years go by to get a 10-year history. We haven't quite got there yet still. And you can see like your percentage of liability. And this is all actuary done that the pension plan has done. And we pull the numbers from their actuary study. You can see where your plan was 4.7 in 15, what your share was to compare in 22, 9.5. You can see how much it's funded down toward the bottom. 57% of it's funded, where it was about 67% funded in 15. So it's become less liquid since 15. And the thing which always hits you all to concern each year is what's called your ARC, your annual required contributions to the plan. And that's what's always had my concern is the funding to, in a sense, cover your current year. You can see that toward the bottom of that page, it says scheduled utility contributions. In 15, it was $434,000. In 22, it was $865,000. So you can see how it's jumped in the percentages. Well, it was 12%. Now it's 21%. So that's a huge cost that every government city that's in the plan, either SARS plan or the state plan, and has to deal with from that standpoint. Any questions? And there's really nothing you can do from that point. I mean, it's all give by actuarial opinions how they fund it throughout the years. It has not funded very well. That's why you're catching up more in these bigger payouts.
To meet that 10-year requirement?
Well, the 10-year requirement is just a presentation. That's all it is. It's how we show 10 years. I mean, it keeps it larger because of different things. I mean, the plan wasn't, things weren't put in. When you were at 12%, maybe you should have been at a higher percentage back before then too. Okay. And so it wasn't funded properly in all those years. And then it depends on your investment earnings and just different things go in that formula and the age of the retirees and all this thing kind of goes in that formula. There's a lot of assumptions that they use. It's not just one thing, but it can drive that number different ways. Now, I was talking the other day with Melanie and Dave is a key thing that happens is what's called your discount rate, which is like the interest percentage that they use on here. And we've been in such a low interest rate for the past 10 years. The lower the rate is going to mean the higher the liability. Well, now we're seeing rates going up now, and so there's a good chance that discount rate is going to go up some, probably here soon, which means then when they do this, it could cause liability to go down some too. Now, there's other things that hit that, the investments are going to go down too because of the earnings of things aren't doing as well. So how much does either one cancel? I don't know, but there's going to be some change to those assumptions because things have changed more now than they have in the prior years. And the rates were so low. So, and again, it's something. Every time we present these to any kind of city or government or special district, I mean, if everybody had to pay this, the government would go broke. I mean, just to ante up to cover their debt because nobody has that kind of, in a sense, liquid assets that they can just write a check and say, I'm good, and let's move on. So there'll be some consideration from the state to fix that to where it could keep things still going, government's going, and not bankrupt them, from my standpoint. So, and the thing is, the standard put it on the books when it happened, but a lot of your underwriting for your bonds and things were already considered those numbers off balance sheet, from my standpoint too. So it didn't change a lot on your bond ratings from my standpoint because it was already kind of built in. So, but anyway, that's a little history on this, and you can see on page 49 is the OPEB, which is the primarily health insurance. And you can see there, the last 5 years, it came in later, pension came in first, of course, reporting. But it's been a little more stable than the pension has been. You can see your liability is $3 million in 18 and 2.8, almost 2.9, so again, not a huge swing. The funding at the bottom, it was 52% funded in 18, and it's 63% now, so it's actually improved. And you can see down for contributions, you were at 4.7% in 18, and now you're at 5.78. So not as much drastic movement as far as requirement. It's been more stable from that standpoint. Which sometimes it's hard to understand with healthcare the way it is. That's good from that standpoint that it has been stable. Any questions on that? Page 51 is the statements that shows by division. Electric, CATV, land, and JMTCYC. You can see the total of each of the revenues and expenses going across there. The net change, like for electric, $477,000. Last year it was $535,000, so there's a slight drop there. And then on cable, it was a loss of $1.5 million this year. It was $1.265 last year. Land was 2.8 this year income versus 2.7 last year, and 40,000 for JMYTC this year versus 48 last year. Getting net income total 1.8 versus 2 million last year. So that's kind of how it breaks down. And I think next year there will probably be a new presentation to where I think the way it's been elected to, since present, it'd be electric division and then broadband division would consume the three under one head. So, any questions there? If not, the page 52 is also just, we'll mention the prior numbers that I kind of gave to you. That's where if you want to compare the 2 years, that's where the two are. Page 53 is more schedules by division. Now, this gives more detail, which I won't go into, but it's good for you to look at it by division. And those really run from page 53 to 62, those schedules and that's in there. So, again, just more detailed analysis if you want to look at by division, by revenue type and different expense types in there. You'll see one area over for the electric and the admin had a pretty good drop on what I can remember is in the biggest drop in there is caused the pension. You know, we had a drop in the liability this year, so it created a good credit to reduce some of the pension costs. So that's why you see a drop in that. On page 63 is the second letter I mentioned to you earlier. This is the letter with government auditing standards that has over the internal controls and also on compliance with laws and regulations. Just to give you a little background on the controls, you have 3 levels of controls. The worst that you could have as a control weakness is called a material weakness, which means the controls are so severe that a material error can go through and not be detected. You all did not have any of those. The next level that we go in here is just called a significant deficiency. And significant deficiencies are control weaknesses that we feel like, in our judgment, they ought to be brought to the Board of Governance, which is Board acts in that capacity, and you didn't have any there either. You've had some in the past, but management has done good to really work on certain control of structures and fix things to where now Melanie's got a good bill of health to where there's nothing in the letter. She's worked hard to get this letter clean, and this year it is clean as far as no comments in this front letter. So. And I commend, I was also doing that too, is the current IT audit going on. It's something that we brought up day one we walked in, and glad it's being done now. It was something that was really, I think, a great need for this place to be, in a sense, done and done. So, again, kudos to management for also taking that on and having it done, because I think it will show benefits going forward.
Yeah, that's something that we had discussed at the board level in January or I believe, to really initiate that. And we've made really good progress in that area.
Yeah. That's something outside from a financial audit you would have, but again, it's an area that, again, I think had a great need. Page 65 is what's called the required communications. Again, I'm going to paraphrase this stuff for you. It's things that we're required to acknowledge to the audit committee, which really this board acts as like an audit committee for the utility. And it starts Form 67. And again, like I said, I'm going to paraphrase a lot of stuff here to you and skip through here. We already talked about the standards that is under government auditing standards. Your responsibility and sense is primarily giving statements that were accurate to your best ability, and management has done that. They've signed off on that. Had really no significant accounting changes. There were some changes done, new standards done. 3 new standards that are on page 68, but none of them had a material impact on the financial statements. We didn't have any difficulties incurred during the audit process here. Management was very cordial, always very professional, and always we come in and kind of disrupt their work cycle in life for several weeks. And again, always very, very willing to help, and we appreciate the cooperation, because it's always good to have stuff ready for us and do things. We really appreciate it. Didn't have consultations with any other auditors outside in the work. Did not note any type of material fraud or illegal acts from the standpoint. And some comments for internal controls. Again, we mentioned nothing severe. We do have some here in the back just for some suggestions, just for some management letters and lesser like items. And that kind of is the communications. The biggest estimates in the financial statements are the pension and the OPEB numbers. The biggest guesses. Page 73 is where we made the adjustments we made for the audit adjustments. Impact there. And primarily most of that deals with those premiums we talked about that ran through. Then on page 74 is adjustments that we did not book, that in a sense we did come across that will either flow through the current year or carry on through. We deem all of them to be not material, and management has too, but we're required to disclose that to you and show those numbers. Page 75 is the representation letter. This is what management signs. That says they take responsibility for these financial statements, even though we draft them for them, they looked at them, approved them, and think they are accurate to their best ability. Page 82 is the internal control letter I mentioned to you earlier. 2 items here, and they're all repeats from the prior year from my standpoint. Nothing really significant, but it's items for consideration. Any questions? Probably took longer than expected, but there's the 83-page report. Well, as always, we appreciate the opportunity to work with the plant board. I was telling Ron earlier, I will be, in a sense, retiring from the firm at the end of 23. So we brought Jennifer O'Connor will be the one taking in charge, and she met with Melanie and Dave the other day when we come in to meet with management over the stuff. And next year she'll come to the meeting and I'll introduce you from that standpoint.
Lanny, I know there's a lot of work that goes into an audit of this nature, and we appreciate you and your team doing that for us. And I like the way that you condense it down to this, time we have in our meeting.
Sure.
Did a great job, so we appreciate that.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Is there any questions? Anybody have any more questions for Lanny?
I think the only thing I would point out is, that state retirement system liability, it's going to be an issue for the state of Kentucky at some point, and at that point we'll be involved in dealing with it. In the meantime, we're handling it like other government agencies are handling it, is the best way to put it. But it's I don't know how the state's going to deal with it. They keep kicking the can down the road, and at some point that's not going to work very well, I don't think. But
They keep pushing those requirement contributions, and then sooner or later that's going to be a huge cost to try to cover each year.
we're pretty locked in, you know. I don't know how we get out of it. You know, not out of the tier 1, as we call it, it's a great retirement plan. The tier 3 that later employees are on, I think it's okay, but you know, I think we could do better with a 401k or 457 plan, you know, more of a defined contribution plan than a defined benefit plan, but the state won't really let us out of the whole thing, you know. But that's a discussion for another day. But it's an issue, you know, so.
Well, it looked good to me. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit report as presented.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Stevens.
Second.
We have a second by Jones. Is there any other questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes. Are we done with Mr. Lang?
Yep, I think he's free to run if you'd like to.
I'll stay, it's okay.
You're welcome to stay.
I don't visit it that often, so.
You're welcome to
Drink
stay.
this right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, moving right along, the lobby renovation bid review. And I guess Dave's going to want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is kind of our second go-around with the lobby renovation. The first plan that we had put out for bids back in April, I believe, the bids just came in too high, so we scaled back the plan to really keep the layout of the lobby largely the same. When I say that, the customers will be coming in the same door. You know, a lot of the outdoor work that we were looking at from a parking standpoint, that all got shelved. And we're really looking now to just take the existing lobby and bring the workstations forward and make them enclosed with bullet-resistant glass, and have 3 workstations. One would be ADA compliant, the other 2 would be standing stations, and there'll be some work on the front entrance of the building, which I think probably is, the front of the building has been pretty similar since the late 60s when it was built. Going to make some upgrades to that, and the rest of it is really just taking where the workstations are now and turning it into usable space. We're going to have a meeting room created. We're making some changes to the drive-through area, but we're not really changing the layout of the drive-through or anything like that, just some internal stuff. So we put this plan out for bids, and we had 2 companies bid on it, and there was Scott Murphy and Daniel and Curley Construction. Scott Murphy and Daniel bid came in at $282,000, and the Curley Construction bid came in at $366,000. So what I would recommend to the board is we'd like to move forward with this project, and with Scott Murphy and Daniel for the $282,000. So I guess with that, I would open it up to any questions or discussion. The timing, we started the project in January, hopefully. That's going to be somewhat dependent on materials. We would finish it sometime again, hopefully within the first quarter, so by March 31st, somewhere in there.
So this space here will all be open?
Yep, that's going to
To
all,
here.
right. So there'll be just one set of exterior doors. From that point into the workstations will be open.
Right.
Yep.
The way it is now, of course, when you come into the lobby, it is a little confusing because there's just some random desk
Yeah.
sitting around. So I like this design where there's a designated area for the customers to walk in and they know where to go.
It's pretty obvious, yeah.
So it's pretty obvious, and it's I like that improvement there.
Yeah, and this project was driven from a safety standpoint to start with. Really, it was from the pandemic, you know, there was all the places putting up plexiglass and that. And then, of course, from a physical safety standpoint as well. So it's both from, the glass will create that separation between customer service and the customers, from a pandemic standpoint, if we were to encounter such a thing again, and also the physical safety. So that started the ball rolling on this. You know, like you just mentioned, our lobby's kind of wide open, and so we're looking forward to this change really from that safety standpoint with the the bullet resistant glass and so on.
I think you said maybe one of these counters is a little lower for handicap
Yes,
accessible.
Yeah, the one, if you look where it says vestibule and you look at them from that angle, the one on the right, farthest to the right, is the single chair shown in there. That's a counter that's going to be lower so that for wheelchair access to be able to.
Yeah.
I think that second page shows a bigger version of it.
Yeah, that's true too. It does show where. So. And then a couple of other minor things that we're going to do with this project is the area that's in where the break room is in the hallway there right now is carpeted. We're going to just change that to vinyl. The carpet just holds too much of anything that gets dropped or spilled or whatever, and so we're going to, and it needs to be replaced with something, so we're going to replace it with vinyl. That's one of the other items in this. So.
And this seems like a significant savings from the original, what we
Yeah,
did before.
The lowest bid before was $420,000 for the other project, and that was just too much for what we really wanted to spend on it. So the revised project came in at $282, which is about $140,000 less. So.
I'll make a motion, we go with Scott and Murphy on this project.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the lobby renovation from Scott and Murphy for $282,000. We have a motion by Witcher. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Jones. Is there any other questions or comments or discussion? Okay. All right, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right, moving on to number 5. We're going to look at the approval of and purchase orders for new head-end equipment and software related to the broadband network rebuild. So we'll consider that at this time.
Yeah, so we have 3 purchase orders looking to get approved in a total of $374,103.49. These 3 POs are related to the head-end equipment for the broadband network rebuild that we proposed, and that was approved last month. This is part of the $2.5 million that was approved last month. The way that the statutes read with the state, that even though we approve the overall project, each PO over $20,000 has to come before the board for approval. So this is part of that. So it's for the head-end equipment and electronics. It's also for we call them ONTs. It's optical network terminals that are basically like a modem that would go into customers' houses. It's those boxes that are going to be part of this project, and a lot of software-related costs as well to manage the network and communicate with those ONTs and all of that. So again, we have 3 POs all to the same organization, totaling $374,103.49.
And I just want to emphasize this is not any additional expense.
Correct.
This is what we have just previously voted on and approved. So
Yep.
It's just due to the law, you gotta
Yeah.
make a, gotcha.
technicalities.
Yeah, you don't have a contract, you got approved project, so you knew you're gonna spend that money, you're agreeable to that, but you still gotta have approval for the POs.
For the POs.
As opposed to this last project you just did, you approved that bid, that was approved. This is a combination of a lot of expense, that's made up of some internal expense, outside expense, so he's going to get POs approved.
Okay.
to move that project forward.
Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the 3 purchase orders totaling $374,103.49 for equipment and software related to the Glasgow Electric Plant Board's broadband network rebuild.
Second.
So, Chairman with the first motion and Witcher with the second. Is there any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. For number 6, we're at the superintendent's report. So, Dave, you want
Yeah.
to talk about that a little bit?
So first is the November fuel cost adjustment, and again, we have a little bit of good news on that front. In October, the month we're currently in, the fuel cost adjustment is about 3.1 cents per kilowatt hour. The November forecast, or the November fuel cost adjustment will be 2.9 cents per kilowatt hour, so roughly a modest decrease of 0.2 cents. The other thing, though, that I would point out is that when you look at the forecast for the fuel cost adjustment that TVA has provided, first, they had actually forecast November to be, back in September, looking forward to November, they gave us a forecast of 3.3 cents a kilowatt hour, and it's actually only 2.9, so about a 4/10 cents lower than what they had forecast. So I think things are moving in the right direction. When you look at the most recent forecast they provided, December, January, February are all slightly lower than they were with the forecast they provided back again in September. So hopefully that situation is getting under control, and we've been fairly fortunate. The weather's been relatively mild and agreeable, both from a hot and cold standpoint. It's been not too hot, not too cold. It's been pretty nice. So that's helped customers with not having extreme bills one way or the other too. So the next item is the outage report. So the outage report, just when we think we're kind of going in the right direction on outages, we end up with a month like we've had this month. So if you look at the big blocks, in September we had 27 recordable outages compared to 9 last year in September. I mean, that's a huge increase. Now, 8 of those were really scheduled outages to do, so we record a scheduled outage when we take a transformer and a customer out of service to do work on the service. Those are recorded as outages. There was 8 of those. So to me, when it's a scheduled item, I'm not so sure it's really too concerning. But we had 9 animal varmint outages this month compared to 1 for the September of last year. Just a huge difference, and those are tough to really do a whole lot about. But the equipment outages, one of the main issues with that. 3 or 4 of the outages were related to an issue that we've had on Cedar Street. It's something we've been aware of. It's something the customers there made us aware of. And what we needed to really do, though, is work with the customers in that area. There's probably 3 or 4 to essentially locate a new pole where one doesn't exist. And the driveways are tight. It's really just kind of a difficult area. And because it hasn't been clear on how to best fix it, it sort of just was remaining the same. Well, now we have a work order to fix it. It's going to get done. So Cedar Street should be taken care of, and I'm sure the customers there will be happy with that. Otherwise, it's really those 2 things. It's the varmints and the equipment. So hopefully we're going to keep making progress in that area. But trees were just 1 tree outage in September, which tends to happen this time of year as the leaves come off the trees. There's less wind. The wind's less of a factor, and we haven't gotten into any ice storms yet or anything like that. So we're in good shape there. So that's the outage report. And then I've got the project updates. So one of the items I just wanted to point out with the project updates is we talked during the audit about that, the bond cash that's sitting on the books. And when, you know, some of you were on the board at that time, but some of you weren't. So when the bond was issued, it was really with two primary projects in mind. One was upgrades to our transmission pole that we have. The other is some work over in the Cherry Street area on the distribution side. So the transmission project is really the first that we've been working on. You'll be seeing purchase orders come before the board in previous month or in future months. But right now, what we have is we have the materials list is with our purchasing department. They're going out and getting bids on materials and lead times. Once those come back with the dollar amounts and the lead times, we'll go to contractors to get bids on the labor side of it. Basically, what we'll be looking at is doing this transmission project sometime in 2023. I don't know exactly what the timing is going to be. It's really going to depend on materials and availability of labor and stuff like that. So, but that's one of those projects that the bond was issued for. You know, it's probably going to be in the $1 million range for this transmission project. And it's replacing a lot of poles, making other equipment corrections to the transmission. It's a sub-transmission system, really. It's our transmission because it's 69 kV. It's really kind of considered sub-transmission. But so that's that project. And then on the broadband network rebuild, we're making really good progress. We got looking at the design and the materials list to be completed probably by sometime, you know, the end of next week, within the next week. We're really moving. It's moving pretty quickly. We'll be, you know, starting to work on this project in earnest, hopefully by the end of the year. You know, so it's moving along. So we have a few material choices to make once you know the design is completed. But you know, I think we're in really good shape there. It's going as well as I could have expected at this point. But you know, we haven't started anything out in the field yet, but the work behind the scenes is really going well. So. Another thing I just wanted to bring the board up to speed on is our node maintenance of the existing hybrid fiber coax network. It's our existing broadband network, and we're working to really maintain that network and improve service there to our our broadband customers. Really, when we have issues on the nodes, most of the time it's the internet service that is impacted because of the data that's transferring back and forth across the network. The cable TV service, when you're watching TV, you can see some pixelating once in a while, and it's annoying, but it's it's not really the issue when you're working on the internet and you just lose connection and all that kind of stuff. So when we work on these nodes, we're going out to nodes that have been giving us trouble, and we're looking at where the trunk line ends, and we're replacing terminations. That's where a lot of noise comes from, is on that end termination. It gets loose or moisture. Any cable drops or any drops to customer homes or businesses that they aren't using our service anymore, we're taking those down and capping off those connections to really just make the network cleaner and easier to troubleshoot when we have to. So that's something that I would say we've put a significant emphasis on in the last month or so. We're going to be working on whatever nodes we need to each week. It's going to be a continual thing. So even though we're overbuilding and rebuilding this network, we're going to focus on also keeping the existing network as good as we possibly can, and hopefully keep improving it while we're bringing the fiber project to customers. So, and then the one that we added, the EV, just wanted to give an update on the EV charging. So the chargers are on target to be delivered toward the end of January. We really haven't, until we have that firmed up, we haven't gone and really gotten bids from contractors to do the installation yet. We're going to wait a few more weeks on that because the turnaround on those bids and getting started should be fairly quick, especially that time of year. So, but we should be in the first quarter of 2023 see those EV chargers come online as well. I think that is it as far as the superintendent reports. Any questions?
Any questions for Dave? Okay. All right. Thanks for that report, Dave. We'll move on to number 7, new business or old business. I think we've got a few items.
Yeah, and a lot of these are, I don't think I added anything new, but just as some reminders, we're going to have the biannual account write-offs in December. And then, as part of the proposed payroll budget for calendar year 2023, we're going to look at the payroll adjustment and the flex spending adjustment kind of in the same lump. So that'll be also in December. And then just a reminder that the board meeting for November has been moved back a week. It's actually the 5th Tuesday in November 29th. And the December meeting has been moved up a week. So instead of being the Tuesday after Christmas, it's going to be the December 20th, that week leading in. So that is about it for new and old business. Any other items anything in note that you can think of for a November meeting? Okay. All right, so yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. All right, there's no other questions, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Witcher,
Second.
second by Stevens. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion passes. We're adjourned.